So I just want to talk about this question of why is it in America where we've got fairly high technology, um, and in some sense a high standard of living. I mean, why can't we make it so that we just work a tiny little bit and that's enough to cover all the food and shelter that we need, and then everything else is optional? And I think there are a couple of different pressures that basically stop that from happening. I think one is actually has to do with military, and this was perhaps even more important earlier in time, but it's still definitely going on now, right? I mean, nations they're often at war with each other, and the ones that survive are the ones that put a lot of effort into their military power. And that might be science and technology development, or straight up, buying more soldiers, essentially, or buying more weapons. Um, so what happens is the nations that don't do that are wiped out, and we're left with only the ones that do. So we're left with, if you look at all the big nations, they've all got military power, and they've all got a sort of a busy workforce that can sustain that kind of power. Okay, so that's one element, and the other element I think is just um, basically we tend to the corporations, whether there's a mastermind behind it or not. I'm not trying to claim either way, but we kind of tend to work toward things that corporations like, because corporations have so much power and so much influence on society. So what corporations would want out of a workforce is people that are smart, but they need to keep working, even though that they're smart. They're not able to just quickly make so much money that they don't have to work anymore, and they can just kind of do art projects and hang out and chill out for the rest of their life, right? So, I mean, there's a few things that stop us from just being able to chill out all of our lives or most of our lives and just work a tiny little bit. I mean, one is there's this huge bar of like the amount of education required before you can really get a job is something like 18 years for just a typical, degree plus your education that you get in school. So this is a huge investment, and even if you don't spend money on this, somebody is spending money on this. It might be the government that's giving you a grant, or some kind of tax is paying for it, or you also want to consider the opportunity cost of like how much could you have been making if you weren't working all that time. So there's a pretty huge cost or debt that you run up getting this education, and then and that's at the beginning of your life, right? It's the worst time to be cranking up debt. Really, at the beginning of your life, the best thing you could be doing is investing, right? Because investments pay off a lot if you've got enough time to reap the reward on them, right? But so the way the system's set up is you kind of run the person down into the ground. Then even if they're a smart person, they've got to spend some time building themselves back up. And during that time, they're basically working for corporations. And the corporation only pays you so much, or the government only pays you so much. So you have to keep going, right? If they just handed you $1 million, then you wouldn't necessarily need to work anymore. You could live off of the interest or whatever. So I think that's that. Just talking about, if you guys have any comments, let me know. I'm not saying I got the total answer on this, but I think it's interesting, and I think that for young people, it might be interesting to think about what you could do if you just started immediately going straight into business, not worrying too much about education, formal education. Just educate yourself and go straight into business and start making money, and you might actually be able to make more than if you go through the whole hoop jumping thing. I mean, there's so much more opportunity now than there used to be. I mean, it used to be that most of your jobs, you kind of had to have this solid, verifiable credentials, like a degree from a accredited university. I think a lot of things are changing now with the internet. It's like if you can find some kind of niche, you can find something that you can do well. I think a lot of things are changing where basically if you have the ability, you can actually do something now, rather than if you have the degree, then somebody will let you do it. So anyway, that's why I'm kind of getting this message out. But I'd like to hear other comments and other perspectives on it. So that's it.